I'm Jennifer Tatro, and this is From Jenn. Let's talk about slow living in cities. Before I moved to Los Angeles a year and a half ago, I was kind of terrified of just the idea of trying to live life the way I wanted to live it while living in a big city. I always kind of felt like, having grown up in a small town and living most of my life in college town or suburban level of places, that people who lived in cities were just a completely different sort of person, that they were somehow unique and special and cosmopolitan in ways that I could never be. It's kind of odd for a small town girl to see city people as special, because in reality, like 10% of the people in the United States live in either Los Angeles or New York metropolitan areas. And if you back out to people who live in cities overall in the US, that's 80% of the people in the country. I couldn't espouse a way of living that would somehow count out 80% of people in the United States. If you live in a city, you have to be able to practice slow living for it to be even a viable thing to talk about. As I was preparing to move, I found this book called New Slow City, and reading it really made me hopeful for the kinds of things that you can do to further slow living goals while living in a city. The book takes place in New York City, but really any city has similar kinds of things going on as what are described in that book. Reading that book and then researching slow living and kind of coming to my own terms with living someplace that is very large and dense, I've come up with a few things that I think of as sort of a starter set for how to live slow in the city. So I thought today I would go over 3 of those slow in the city concepts. These are all things that you can do if you live in a densely populated area and still want to slow down your life, practice slow living, and learn to take things at a lesser speed than is seemingly natural to big city life. The first thing on my list is to seek out quiet places. Every city has quiet places. I wrote a blog post about this not long ago, and among the places that I talked about there were places like botanical garden, coffee shops, tea shops, that sort of place. Not every one of those is a quiet place and a slow place, but if you find the right one, it can become sort of a slow home away from home in the city. Libraries are a great slow place in the city. Museums can be an amazing slow place. More the smaller ones than the big popular ones, but you can go into a museum gallery and just kind of spend hours in front of one piece of art or one display. And then one that I learned from the New Slow City book is any place up high. In the book, the author and his fiancée would go up on a space on the roof of their New York City apartment. I have a roof space here that I absolutely adore, where I'm sitting right now, but generally any place where you can get up above the hubbub of the city is usually a great place to just kind of take it all in stride and to remove yourself a little bit from the hustle and bustle of every day in a very dense place. Which leads me to the second thing that you can do to slow down in the city, and that is to create your own havens. For me, that meant bringing in a lot of plants and having a place in my home that has enough greenery to make me feel like I'm in a more natural environment. You might set up like a meditation space or an altar in your own home, or just have a bedroom that's super welcoming and that closes you away from the traffic and the sirens and the planes and the people. The third thing that I'd suggest is very specific to living in a city. When you live in a large city, you have a lot of advantages that people who live way out in the country or in a small town don't have. To live more slowly in the city, take advantage of the time that the city offers you. Living in the city gives you the advantage of not having to drive a long distance to do specific errands. You don't have to drive to go to the grocery store or the post office generally. You often don't have as long of a commute as someone who lives out in a suburb or a small town. You can use the city to your slow living advantage if you acknowledge that time saving and then use that time for the things that are most important to you. Acknowledge that time that you've saved by living in a dense urban area, and then use that time to further your slow living goals. I hope that these 3 suggestions have given you some food for thought, or maybe a different way to think about how slow living can work in an urban environment. If you did find it useful, go ahead and hit that thumbs up on that video. It means a lot to me, especially as a new channel. I'm going to link the blog posts where I have talked about slow living in the city in the description, but you can always find all of my writing at fromjenn.com or on Patreon at patreon.com/fromjenn. Follow me on Instagram at from_Jenn, on Twitter at JHTatro, and subscribe to this channel. Until next time, I'm wishing you love and joy and all those good things, and I can't wait to talk to you again.